I will go ahead and get us started. So my name is Abby Gosling. I'm the Program and Fiscal Recovery Manager at Guilford County. And co-presenting with me today is one of my team members, John, and I'll let John introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Waters. I'm with the Pandemic Recovery Office, where I'm a performance and budget analyst.
Our agenda for today, we are going to give you a little bit of background around how we got here with the RFI, what our purpose and goals and the funding associated with this process is, and then talk in more detail about what the RFI form, what questions we'll be asking and looking for as part of that application process, and then what the timeline for that looks like as well. And then, like I said, we'll have a question and answer portion at the end too, so we'll be able to address any questions that come up. So how did we get here? Over the past year, partners from Guilford County, the City of Greensboro, the City of High Point, and PART, which is the Piedmont Authority for Regional Transportation, have been working together to talk about what our current system of transportation looks like and where some of those key gaps in our service and access to service are. And so as part of that, they've developed this shared vision of where we want to see transportation in Guilford County going. And that shared vision is of a unified, accessible, and affordable transportation system across the county. And some of the key focuses within that are seamlessly connecting people to jobs and access to community services, also a shared commitment to equitably providing access across the community, and how rethinking our transportation policies, and then continuing that collaborative work as a group, all the partners in our county to develop what that transportation system could look like as we move forward. So from that development of the shared vision, we've moved into what is now this Transportation Pilot Program RFI, which is an opportunity for us to develop some short-term, quick responses to some of the key needs that we've identified in our transportation system. So I use that term RFI, and if you're not familiar with this term, this is a request for ideas process. And so I want to give a little context to what that means. A request for ideas is really an opportunity for us to collect ideas from community members and organizations around the specifically identified need. And it's also an opportunity for us to identify potential stakeholders that we can further engage with in this work and we may not already know about in our community. What an RFI is not, it's not a formal application for funding for a project like a CBO or a grant application would be. And it's not a formal solicitation for goods or services like an RFP or an RFQ would be. So why are we doing an RFI for this process? It's really allowing us to cast a broad net across our community and gather ideas from a lot of different sectors in our community, not just partners working directly in transportation. We obviously really want to engage those partners directly working in transportation, but we want to cast our net broader than that as well. So people who may not already have the full expertise and capacity to develop a full RFP or RFQ, like a different process would be. The other thing is it also gives us an opportunity to hear ideas, even if they're not a fully formed project proposal yet. So maybe you've heard about a really cool idea, transportation idea in another community, and you want to share that with us. You may not know all the logistics and details around that or be able to personally implement it, but we still want to be able to gather those ideas. So the RFI really allows us to do that, and that's why we've chosen to do that for this process, so we can cast that net and engage more people in developing ideas for this project. So from that, the other piece of this RFI process is the available funding. So the Guilford County Commissioners have set aside $1 million in ARPA-enabled funds to be used for transportation access projects. And so within that, as part of this RFI process, there's no funding limit for any single project, but it is our intent to help support several different pilot initiatives that can quickly and effectively address the challenges that we've identified as part of this RFI. That being said, we're also welcoming ideas and proposals that may require funding beyond the amount allocated for this RFI. So even if your idea may go beyond what that $1 million available for this process, we still want to know those ideas and don't want to limit your ideas just because you know that available funding amount. The other thing is, even if your idea doesn't have a fully formed funding request around it or a project budget, we still want you to share those ideas with us as well. And that's where I said, like, maybe you know of another community that has a really promising initiative and you want to just share that idea with us, or you have your own idea that you think is really valuable and want to share, but you don't have a full budget around what implementation would look like. We definitely are still welcoming those ideas, and we would love to hear that as part of this process. With that, while we will be intending to help support some of these pilot initiatives to address challenges, we'll also be sharing all of the promising submissions with the board for consideration of future investment and future consideration. So that's a little bit about how we got here, what the broad picture of what we're looking at with this project. And I'm going to turn it over to John to talk a little bit about what those core identified goals of the challenges we want to address through this process.
Thank you, Abby. So as Abby mentioned, there are a few challenges that we are looking to assist with this process through the RFI process. The first is what we consider as people to work. The challenge that we have is that potential and current employees around Guilford County require transportation to existing and emerging employment hubs, but there seems to be a lack of dependable service towards those key hubs, or have limited or no service during certain hours. So one of the goals that we're looking to assist in this RFI to clear up is, can our community assist individuals most in need who work perhaps a second or third shift, or work on the weekends, or may not live in an area or work in an area accessible by a bus route to access their employment, to maintain their employment. So people to work is the first goal that we're looking for these ideas to cover, if possible. Our second goal is people in need to services, as described as a lack of transportation that negatively impacts everyone, but specific populations that face larger burdens, especially those who are justice involved and need to make it to court, are experiencing homelessness, or utilizing the county's public human services, such as DSS, public health, or behavioral health. A lack of timely and accessible transportation is often cited as a reason some individuals are unable to make their mandatory or elective appointments or meetings, or complete assigned programs as determined by, such as court services. And so we are asking, is there the ability for our community to assist these individuals in getting to necessary appointments, such as medical, mental health, substance use disorder, or court-ordered services, or access public human services so they can attend their mandatory appointments and complete their assigned programs in a timely fashion. Our third goal is people in crisis to care. The challenge that exists in our community currently is that our current transportation systems are not the best options for people experiencing a behavioral health crisis, especially in asking them to navigate community resources, getting on those community commuters such as buses, utilizing taxi services, and connect to services, especially beyond fixed route systems, getting to their appointments, getting to the assistance that they require given their crisis need, but that might be outside of regular times of operation or over the weekends. So our ask is, can our community better support people most in need who are suffering an acute behavioral health issue or crisis, navigating and connecting to needed services wherever and whenever the need arises. We think of this as just not how do we get people to services, but are we also able to get services to them in a timely fashion to assist with their behavioral health needs. So those are our three goals that we are looking to gather from this RFI process in order to assist individuals in our community. And so we will be looking for, so our next slide is about what we'll be looking for through the agency, through the RFI process, and I'll tag that back over to Abby.
Yeah, so hopefully some of you have seen the PDF version of our RFI application that is on the webpage where you signed up to attend today's session. So if you haven't already seen that, I will encourage you to go ahead and go look at that PDF version of our application. And these next couple slides will go through exactly what is in that application, what we're looking for. So this agency information, just sort of some general information about who you are and who's submitting the idea. So what type of entity you are, especially if you're submitting as an organization, a little bit about your entity and the work you do, your mission statement. That being said, you can also submit an idea as an individual. It's set up mostly geared towards providing that information for a specific agency. But if you're entering an idea just as an individual citizen, you can just select other on the entity type and just type in individual so that we know you're submitting this idea on your own behalf rather than as an organization. And so, oh yeah, go ahead, John.
And so idea information, what are we trying to pull from these requests for ideas? And so there's a few things. Again, we ask you to look at the PDF version of the RFI as it stands on the website, but all of the questions are going to be detailed in trying to garner this information from you and your idea, specifically the goal. Which goal are you trying to aim to serve? The 3 goals that we just listed. People in getting to work, people in need of getting to services, and people in crisis. So if there are multiple goals that you are trying to serve, please place those as well. If your idea can cover 2 or all 3 of those ideas, we are open to accepting those as well. The purpose and outcomes, what outcomes are you looking to achieve? What do you see as your program? What deliverable will they be trying to entice in our community, and how they can help? Metrics and verifications, how are we going to track progress with this program? How do we track program effectiveness? What are the details? What are the metrics that will actually guide how effective this program is? Risks and assumptions, what are the challenges that you see this program running into, and how would those barriers affect the effectiveness of the program, and how do you in turn try to navigate those barriers and overcome those issues? What assumptions are you making about other factors in the communities, the population that you're working with, the time and effort of other people that you are going to require in doing this, staffing, those kind of issues as well. Tasks and resources. What is the specific scope of the work of your scope of work for your idea? How is that formulated? What exactly are you looking to engage with your RFI, with your idea? What is the program, pretty much the bare bones of the program and how it's supposed to work? Budget, how much will your idea cost, and what are the cost items? As Abby had explained earlier, even if there is not a formalized budget for your idea, we still would like to, we still request that you place in your idea and submit it. But if you have a general idea, if you have a specific idea, if you have no idea, with regards to budget, we still want to have you submit your idea so that we can, on our end, look and see what is viable. And collaboration. What level of collaboration is involved with idea with your community partners, with government partners in the idea that you are formulating, and how that looks, what would be considered success in that collaborative idea.
Thank you. So just to close this out, a little bit about the timeline of what it looks like for submitting an idea in this process. So last week, the transportation RFI was posted, that webpage was posted with all this information, and again, that PDF version of the form was posted online. You obviously know you're here today, so for that May 2nd virtual information session, and we're going to have another information session, which will be the same information as today, so there's no need to attend both of them. We'll be doing the same presentation, unless you want to come back and ask another question or something like that. But we'll have two of those, and then after that session on May 8th is when we will formally open the RFI to start accepting submissions. So that will be an online form that is on our webpage. That will be on the same page where you signed up for today's event, the same page where all of the information about this RFI is posted. In a minute, at the end of the session, I'll provide some contact information for the group. And if you have any issues, technical issues with that online form, or that format is not working for you, we don't want that to be a barrier to you submitting your idea. So please reach out to us and let us know if you're experiencing any issues or just struggling to find that online form. And we'll make sure to connect you to an opportunity to still submit an idea. So please don't let that stop you if you're interested in submitting something. But so that will open officially to start accepting submissions on May 8th, and that will stay open for the month of May and June and close at the end of the day on June 30th. That is your last day to submit an application. I do believe that the form will allow you to save and come back later. So please make sure if you start an application and you come back to it later that you actually hit that submit the end. That's the only way we'll be able to see what you've put into that form. So by June 30th, make sure you've hit submit or whatever you have in that form. And then once those ideas all come in by the end of June, our Guilford County team will collect all of those ideas and read through them and share them with the Board of Commissioners and our state transportation stakeholder group and identify some of those pilot areas for use of funds. And then also just share all of those ideas with potential up to that group, even if they have to be for future consideration. So that's the timeline of what we're looking at. Those key dates is that June 30th submit by. And at this point, we'll turn it over to the group for any questions that you have about the process, about the application. And feel free, like I said, put those questions in the chat if you have them, or use the raise hand feature in reactions, and you can come off mute and say your question that way too. Andrew, for the ongoing review of submissions, all ideas will be reviewed after the June 30th close date. So we'll collect all of those ideas. It won't be a rolling process. We're just going to leave that open and give enough time to get those ideas in and then review them once that formally closes. Great question. Any other questions from the group? Andrew's question in the chat is, for variations of an idea, whether it be funding levels or otherwise, should those be submitted as one proposal or multiple? I think if it's the same idea, but you're talking about maybe what it would look like at different phases, if you're talking about different funding levels or different levels of service, I think that's maybe what you're getting at. I would submit that as one idea so that we can understand that that's the same idea, but you can use some of the space in those questions to articulate what those different levels might look like. And there's a narrative section in the budget section too that you can talk a little bit about what those different cost levels might be. If it's a subset of the idea and it's a different component of it altogether or a different idea, submit those in two separate proposals so we can understand that they're different things. But if it's the same idea, just variations within it, I would submit that all as one. Question. For companies, should we submit specific information? So yes, if you're submitting on behalf of your company in that agency information, please make sure to put in the information about your company, and you can put sort of an overview and information like that in that mission statement box. As long as you're submitting on behalf of your company. If you're submitting on behalf of yourself, that's where you could put it in as an individual, or you can just indicate your level of connection to the company, but not on that behalf. And there should be plenty of opportunity in that like scope of work section too, if you want to talk about like your company's specific involvement in the idea. Great questions. Anything else? Bailey's question is, are there any areas or ways the money would be spent that would not be allowed? Good question. The limitations on the use of our funds, the Guilford County $1 million funds, would be as long as we're compliant with state law. So sometimes situations like direct funds to individuals, direct grants to individuals may not be allowable, but it can depend on the situation. So in that situation, I would say submit your idea as you are thinking of it. And if we get to the stage where we're wanting to fund that idea, that's where we would be able to work out how we might navigate that in a way that makes sure we're complying. But in general, there's not many limitations on how the funding is spent. We just have to make sure that we're complying with state guidance on what a county is allowed to spend money on. But that's something that we can work through the logistics as we get into it. Great question, Bailey. So the question for the group is, if ideas were chosen and worked through after the July review, what is the expected timeline for spend of the funds? So there's not a formal timeline for expected spend because we're waiting to see what ideas come through and what that looks like as far as what you've presented as an idea and what the start. I think there might be a lot of variation between startup time and working out all the details of the idea depending on what it is. So we don't have a formal timeline of spend, but we're going to want to our hope is to move through those ideas pretty quickly and get an understanding of where we want to fund. Beyond that, we don't have a deadline to spend the funds by, but we're going to try and keep that process moving as efficiently as possible. Again, Andrew, this is pretty open-ended, so no limit on time. What we've asked for, so the question for the group, if you didn't see it in chat, is there a request for a limit on time horizons? So 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever that may be. There's not a limit. What we've asked for in the budget section is if this is sort of a one-time project, like putting up infrastructure or something like that, we're asking for sort of the full project budget for that one-time cost. If this is something that would be an ongoing program that would have sort of a need for annual recurring funds, we're asking that you provide us with what the startup costs, or if there's specific startup needs to that, and then beyond that, what the budget for 1 year of implementation would be. So that will give us a sense, and then as we get into the project and look at the details of all the ideas we have and where the funding might go, that's when a determination on what that time horizon on implementing a pilot program makes sense depending on the idea. But in the budget section, we're asking for a 1 year annual budget. We still have plenty of time if people have more questions. While people are thinking of them, and if you're typing your question in the chat, anything like that, so John, can you just go to the next slide and I'll cover the contact information. So as I mentioned a couple times, the Transportation Pilot Program RFI webpage is live on our Guilford County website. That is where all of this information is housed. I think you should all be familiar with it probably at this point because that's where our registration link for today was. That's going to house all our information. That's where we'll house this recording from today's session and any updates to the information. So that's going to be your best sort of one-stop shop to find all of the information about this process. But as you have questions come up or things that you didn't think of today but want to ask later, or any issues that you run into in submitting an RFI, you can email this email on the screen, and because of the hyperlink, it's a little hard to tell, but that's ARPA_RFI@guilfordcountync.gov. And we'll be able to collect questions there and address those throughout the process. Yeah, Perry, great question. So like I said, we'll be posting this recording, and we can also post a link to these slides as well, so you can have that information in hand. That is all we had for you today. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We'll hang out for a little while. If people have questions that they're still pondering or formulating, we can hang out for a little while and address any other questions that come up. But if not, again, thank you so much for being here. Let us know if other questions come up. Email that ARPA RFI email. We look forward to seeing your ideas through this process.